Hey everybody, welcome to Cinema Gulp. I'm Ben, and this is our podcast review of Napoleon. And joining me is Mark, our resident gamer. Hey, Mark.
How's it going, Ben?
Good, good. And Babak, who's become our resident historian on the channel. Hey, Babak, good to have you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I last time I saw Mark was probably Super Mario Brothers, and then obviously we saw Babak for Oppenheimer, which makes sense to a
Oh
game
yeah.
and historical fiction. So yeah, Napoleon, Ridley Scott's, I want to say latest, and I always want to say last, but hopefully not, because he is about 80. But yeah, man, let's get into it. This is totally spoiler heavy for anyone listening, so we're gonna, well, spoilers. It's a historical movie, so whatever. Let's go around and just get opening thoughts. Like, Bobak, what'd you think of this? Because I know you're the first one. You're the first one out of us that saw it.
I made sure to get the first, matinee showing the day before release, and I was amped. I was joking that I rode up on horseback in full Napoleon costume, but that would have been awesome if I had. But yeah, honestly, I was an early booster. I was just all about this because I just love when you have large cast, heavy on the budget, the costumes, the settings, trying to reenact historical images and events and stuff. And like, I'm all for it and I support it for that reason. And then when I watched it, I got all of that. But honestly, like the acting and I think the casting and maybe some of the writing, just some of the storytelling, it was like a little short of what I was hoping for, especially because I watch a lot of these like HBO, like I just watched Catherine the Great again last night, 4-part miniseries. It was really well done. The stuff that, I mean, I appreciate that they try to get in the personal life of Napoleon, but it just didn't feel like people really actually relating to each other. And, so I just had some issues with the storytelling and the casting and the acting, but I love that it was made and I'm going to definitely watch it again. I just fast forward the acting and I go straight to the action.
I thought it was better than I was expecting because I wasn't excited for this movie at all, you guys. But we were just like, you know what? I really want to see it. I just need to see it because I love Joaquin Phoenix. He is, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but he's so fucking funny in this movie. Like almost everything he does is funny. And I appreciated that about this movie. It didn't get, even though he uses the word melancholy about 900 times, it never feels melodramatic. It always feels kind of quirky. You know what I mean? Like it never gets like
Yeah.
seriously sad or anything like that. I mean, some of the music during the battle scenes and stuff is like epic, oh, grand scale, but I appreciated that it kind of took this more like this guy was a goofy fucking dude. And it kind of and he's kind of a baby, but obviously a master like tactician in military, but like I don't know. I appreciated it for that. And I also see what you're saying, Bobek, because I felt like they were playing dress up a lot of the times. Like they're
Yeah.
I have this like love-hate relationship with Ridley Scott. He knows how to create amazingly giant epic scope cinematography with his cinematographer. On the other hand, the movie he got famous for, Alien, was super close up, confined, and
Mhm.
claustrophobic. But these days, there's so many shots in this movie that were so horrible. Like just they looked off-putting. They were flat side
Yeah.
shots, overlit shots. There was so much stuff going on. I mean, we'll get into it because I want to see what Mark has to say, but I'm so frustrated with his movies because he has like this brilliant side, and then there's just like, dude, why did you use that take? And that might have been the editor, who knows? But overall,
Mhm.
much more fun, entertaining movie than I was expecting. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, so I kind of like with you guys, I kind of went in with like zero expectations. I mean, just from the trailers I saw, it looked epic. So, how cool and I know like well done historical dramas can be pretty cool, right? Because you get a piece of history, even if there's like a lot of fiction inserted into it. It's always great to see that captured like on screen, and especially with some of these key moments and key battles playing out, to think like, hey, this only stuff like this was only happening just barely 200 years ago, right? So a great lens into like how much the world has changed. But yeah, like you guys were saying, uh great casting. definitely wasn't expecting some of the quirkiness that was in the film, and I don't know if
Right?
that has anything to do with like, did Napoleon actually was he actually this way? Was he this way? Did Joaquin decide to play him that
I
way?
feel it was
I was always
Joaquin's choice. Yeah, because he's like, dude,
it could have been.
I can't do the accent, so let me just be like really eccentric.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely it definitely caught me off guard, but like I said, it didn't take away from the performance. I just thought it was an interesting choice. And
No,
then like,
no.
of course, and of course the battles were amazing. Um, I guess one of the things that stood out to me too is like there's a lot of moments in the film that cut, like the pacing in some key sequences is just really quick, right? Even though you have this, 157-minute runtime, I guess there was just so much they wanted to cover. You're just jumping from like sequence to sequence or scene to scene, like really quick. Like one example was the guy kind of kidding with him, like, oh, you should be king. And then he just scoffs. And then the next scene, he's being crowned. It's like there was like no lead up to that. It was just like, okay, we're just going to make you king now. Even, I mean, that did happen,
Yeah.
right? Like that did
Mhm.
happen. But at the same time, the way it was presented, I was just like, okay, we're doing this, right? Like, it's just that quick. Um,
Yeah, in that scene where he basically is just dressed up like Commodus from
yeah, that was
Gladiator.
very, that was very Gladiator vibes in that
But
scene.
that's
That
the
was,
scene I'm talking about with some of the worst. That's the worst cinematography in the movie. I have no idea why they used the shots they used. It was just bad. It was just ugly. It was gross. But
hmm. Yeah. But for me, my favorite part was definitely like the battles, right?
a
Like
hundred percent.
just to see that recreated, and if they did really use people instead of CGI, which it looks like they did, it looks like these things were actually, cast, and everyone got out there and got together and shot these scenes and made it look great. Amazing to see. Like that's the kind of stuff that went down in history.
I really felt like when it came to the battles, my favorite was the opening one, where it shows how they're recasting the cannons that they have into these mortars that they would need because they're going to then take this fortress and then turn those cannons against their own ships, to get
Yeah,
the British out of that one French. That I feel like that was such a great open that it was almost for me the highlight of the movie, like right
that
at the
was one of the
beginning.
highlights for sure.
It
Yeah,
was amazing. But then and I don't know if that's how it went down in that battle, because when we were talking just for fun with one of your movie friends, they told us that they heard that the battle with the lake actually resulted in a lot of loss of equipment, but not
Mm.
that much loss of life. And it was a tactical, brilliant success, but it wasn't like it was a mass slaughter. I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to look it up. But I feel like there was so much stuff that actually was so brilliant about what he really did, that I don't know why they really focused on. I mean, I feel like some points, like you were saying, Mark, there's some points of history that you just have to show because that moment is important, and so they would feature it. But like the whole thing with the lake, I'm not sure. And the other thing that really got me was I was overlooking so much bad acting and just so much, just like I was like, why is it shown this in that way? Because I saw that they had the big Battle of Waterloo at the end, and I
Mm.
really was hoping to like get it, right, and I could forget everything else. And I don't know if this is the actual thing, but I believe that what made Wellington, the Duke who won the British side, the victory there, I think what made him so brilliant was that instead of having the soldiers line up in three rows, he had them all line up in one long row. So they all fired at once, and they were all on their bellies, hidden in a semicircle on top of the hill. And when the French charged into it, they just like pop up and they all fire the volleys at once. And so those really cool square formations that we see
yeah.
at the end where the musket
That's
men
why
are
I
dealing with
call
the
this movie
cavalry,
Stratego. That felt like
that is
playing
that is
Stratego.
awesome. Yeah, I mean that is an amazing battlefield formation that I don't remember seeing anywhere in any other, like exactly. But
Yeah,
I don't think that was the innovation that won the British the battle. I think it
mm.
was a total different tactical thing that I kept waiting for, and it never happened. And I was like, oh, come on,
Well,
like
the
this
movie
is
made
really
it
cool.
seem
I
like
love
that
what I'm
was
seeing.
the movie made it seem
I'm
like
sure,
that was it.
yeah, I'm sure that they used it. I'm sure that they used it, but because that was a common, those square wedges were like a couple hundred years old at that point. So
Oh,
everyone
okay.
had
I didn't
used
even
them.
know that, but
Yeah, we just haven't seen them in film that much. You,
because
you know what
that's
I mean?
what you do in that game Stratego is you try
Yeah.
to build like
Yup.
yourself a circle where you can come at somebody from wherever they move next.
Exactly. But I really feel like I couldn't decide if this movie was trying to just show us all of the important historical points and just bring all like the famous painting of the coronation to life and stuff like that, or if it was really trying to give us a nuanced look as to the people who lived those lives. And it didn't really seem to do either. Like if you're supposed to just show me, okay, first he was a general, then he was an emperor, and like Mark, you were saying, well, that happened awfully fast. He was laughing about the idea a moment ago, and now fast forward, and it's an accomplished fact.
Yep.
Like you don't get the nuance, you don't get how it happened, and yet if you're gonna just show all of the historical images, I never once saw him put his hand in his vest. I never
Yeah,
once
I was
heard the
gonna ask about
overture.
that.
Yeah, I never once heard the overture of 1812. Like, if you're gonna show me just the paintings and the stuff, show me that. Like even when the guy's having sex, he's in his full military uniform. Like he could never break through and actually be a real person. And so then when Joaquin Phoenix tried to humanize him, it was really creepy and it was really weird. And like, I'm like, dude, you are the last person who should be in this role. Like he couldn't be serious enough to be the actual guy, and he couldn't be human enough to be a person who's experiencing that life. And I was just like, dude, you're bringing this whole movie down for me, like. Same thing with the battles. I was like, what I'm seeing is amazing, but I don't know if you're just trying to paint a picture for me or if you want me to like get the nuance. And they didn't really seem to go like both. Like I don't know, it was kind of lost in the middle a little
Well,
bit.
he definitely
And
shifted in characters during the battle scenes as opposed to
yeah,
all the Josephine stuff. Like always just kind of pulls his he always just kind of pulls his wang out and does her from behind, which is hilarious, by the way. I never knew if that was supposed to be funny or not. And can I just say, Vanessa Kirby was incredible as Josephine. Like to
she
me, she was
really
the best part.
saved the performance. I mean, she really did.
Yeah, she was fantastic. Yeah. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how that whole relationship kind of ended up. So it was really interesting for me to watch that. I mean, I don't know how accurate it is. I know that Ridley Scott has gone on record because all the French people hate this movie. And he says, well, the French people hate themselves.
That's kind of funny.
That's an 85-year-old director going, I don't fucking care. It's not a movie about Napoleon Bonaparte's life. It's a movie about his military career. And like Babak was saying, that opening scene or that opening battle, which is so good. It's kind of
That's so good.
To me, it seemed like that was him proving himself. So it kind of
Exactly.
the movie
Yes.
starts at his military uprising, like from the beginning, and how good of a job he is as a strategist, and like how well he executed that. And that scene is great. I mean, even when you see those other battles, he knows how to use like parts of the cannon. And I think there's even a line in this where he goes, I know how to aim. I know where to put a cannon.
Yeah, I thought it was a strong opening for what this majority of this film is supposed to be, right? You open on him being told, I'm going to take this siege of Toulon and, turn this around for us. Because, well, I mean, technically it opens with like the French Revolution and you see the queen getting beheaded. But, when you're cutting to and Napoleon's there watching, but, when it mentions how he wants to go after his first like major promotion. So you get the siege of Toulon, which is a great way to showcase that. And then I think one thing I noticed too in the movie, they said he went from captain to brigadier general, but then I was looking some stuff up and it actually said he was supposed to have been a colonel instead to a brigadier general. So I don't know which of those is supposed to be historically true between the two choices.
Yeah, no clue.
But yeah,
I figured Bobak was going to have some kind of I know,
because he was only a colonel at the time.
Yeah, but you would think that would be something that they should easily have gotten correct, whichever it was supposed to be, right?
I agree.
But but it was interesting too because I did enjoy going. It did showcase, like, it did feel a lot of it was just fast forwarding to like a lot of his major just military career accomplishments.
Oh, it was jumping around times like fucking crazy, especially the last like hour just kept jumping years, like every other.
Yeah, a lot of time skips and time skips that weren't short either, right? Sometimes we skipped like years ahead.
And they never change his physical appearance except for his hair. They just kept putting
it in
front of his face.
He had no age range, and that wig or whatever it was looked really bad. It looked so bad.
I think that just had to do with the casting, right? Because Joaquin was obviously playing. He's older than the character he's supposed to be playing. So at that point, they probably figured, just leave that as is, I
thought it was funny that Josephine keeps calling him fat, and we're like, he's not though. They keep trying to they keep trying to angle the shots to make him look fat and short.
Mm.
And they're
Yeah.
using some forced perspectives in certain shots when he's with his his unit or whatever, not
Yeah.
unit, I'm sure whatever it's called, to make him look a little shorter. Even though I've that whole kind of rumor's kind of been disbanded anyway. He was just average height.
Yeah, he was average height. Yeah. It was the British
height.
propagandists. He was 5'7", which was average for the time. And it was the British propaganda trying to make him out to be the Napoleon complex. Well, you can't say that about him unless you say he's short.
Yep.
Yeah, now Napoleon complex has been called like the Chihuahua complex. Like,
it is.
Small
Yeah, I know it is. Yeah. But, on the age thing, I mean, Josephine was a few years older than Napoleon. And, the actress is easily, Vanessa Kirby is
she's
easily 10 years younger.
Early to
she's
mid
35.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Joaquin is 49, so that part was just a little difficult for me because she always looked younger than him, no matter what. And the whole idea was that the whole storyline is that he's dating an older woman who can
and that's why she couldn't have kids. Yeah,
yeah. And it's so hard for me to get that, when she's young and beautiful, and it's like I don't know, So I mean, she did a great job as an actress.
Yeah,
but I feel like just again, Joaquin Phoenix, I don't know, but did he get? Was he getting producer creds?
He was a producer.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense because he's the total wrong choice for the role.
He is the wrong choice, and obviously
I would have done it.
He's an Oscar winner, so I get it. But I mean, if this were made in the '80s, it would be like Bruno Kirby or some shit.
Yeah. Well, I think this
like
also
a short Italian guy or some shit.
Yeah, but I think this also exposes some of the flaws of the film, right? Because if she is supposed to be older and that's the reason she can't have kids, like you could only, as an audience member, I could only guess as to why she couldn't have kids, right?
Exactly.
Whether it was genetic, whether it was age, some other condition, maybe it was him, right?
Well, because the movie doesn't help you out with that, Mark, because it shows she has like a young kid, and then at the end she has like a daughter who's old, and it's like, where the fuck were these people the whole movie?
Yeah, the story just never included them, right? They were there at the beginning when he first met her, and then that was it. Yeah,
and then at the end, one of the funniest scenes, I laughed out loud when Napoleon's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And it's like, it's her daughter. Like, he's like, "I forgive you."
All of the air quote romance between Napoleon and Josephine was not romantic. I mean, none of it. It was all, for me.
Oh no! It's
between them was all totally gross and cringy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even as the actress, like you could see her as a woman and as an actress having to pretend that this is all nice and welcome and awesome. Like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm just thinking, like, this is so 200 years before #MeToo.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised this movie got made now, where it's just about a man who's telling a girl, a woman, to get under the table because he wants to fuck her
in front of like the servants and stuff, and just.
I love that scene where he's talking to, when he's finally captured after Waterloo, and he's talking to that group of kids, those boys, and he's just like, what does he say? He goes like, the hardest thing in life is accepting other people's failure.
Yeah, because he's in his mind, he still did no wrong. Even at that point,
never made a mistake. He even says that,
even though he's sitting in a prison barge on his way to exile, he still is like, no, I'm just in charge of this new island. Is all of this like the creepiness and just sort of, there's certain things not working because Ridley Scott is so old, and like he thinks that it's actually sexy, and like he thinks that this is the way it should be, and this and that, or is this like a commentary that's actually very cleverly done?
It's a historical drama. He was trying.
I mean the acting and the way that it's presented.
Ridley Scott is. I know a lot of people have been reviewing this movie saying like, oh, it's more of a romance than a war movie or whatever. I don't think Ridley Scott ever said that. I think he was
I would say about relationship.
No, I was just. I just think romance. It was Ridley Scott trying to show this man, and why he. Because he's a fascinating dude, at least from this movie. Like he is. He's so good on the battlefield, but he's just a wreck, and he doesn't know what to do with himself as a human being. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
You want to be dominant, or does he want to be dominated?
Well, I think a lot of geniuses are like that in real life, right? Like they have these unique talents, but they usually fall short socially, right? Like you could be a
Yeah.
brilliant mathematician, a brilliant strategist, a brilliant blank, but
Oh,
then
dude,
But
but then you
horrible
have
at a
but then you
cocktail
have
party.
yeah, but you have no idea how to like behave or act around other humans.
it's hard to tell with these directors now, like Clint Eastwood and Ridley Scott, who are well into their 80s. It's hard to tell what they're even trying to say. You know, they're never going to bow, nor should they, to like, you know, like modern stuff. He was trying to say, to answer, well, I hope to answer your question, was like, it wasn't supposed to be romantic. It's just like, that's how shit was, you know, like I think Braveheart got so much criticism because William Wallace wasn't such a sweetheart to all these ladies that he
Right.
was in the movie.
Yeah. No, he was raping them on the first night, just like every other lord.
Yeah, and it's horrible, but it's like if you're going to tell, I mean, it's going to be harder and harder these days in this climate to tell historical dramas because life was so different, and you have to accept that it
absolutely.
was there, or
You have to accept that.
You
No,
have
you
to.
really do. Yeah.
But see, I'm glad the movie didn't shy away from that because people
Exactly.
today are so soft. They need to know this is human history. This is the way we treated each other. We were very, very horrible to
Yeah,
one
if
another.
anything, it's a good
Yeah.
way to show you how we've changed, you know?
Absolutely. There was one battle and only one where they said, you know, at the opening of the scene, they put the subtitles up and it says Battle of whatever in this location, this date. And then for one of those battles, they listed the body count. And they only did it for that one battle. And I was like, why do they do that? You know? And I think it's an editing
That was
thing
bad.
because
I feel
at
like
the
that was
end,
I feel like that was an editor decision that Ridley Scott didn't even notice because they give the whole body counts to all of
but
them.
at the end they give the body count for all of them. So I
That
was
was
like,
dumb.
well,
That was dumb.
why didn't you put the body count for every battle the way you did for that one,
Could have
or
been just
none
a
of them?
mistake, or
That's what
was
I'm
it
saying.
was it for the big one though? Was it for the big loss?
No, it was like one along the middle, you know.
Mhm.
And so that's my point, is that I think that they didn't even have that cohesion to say, here's the statement that we're making. We're going to show the escalating body count, and we're going to contrast that with all of the civil reforms that his legal code brought about. You know, he ended slavery, he ended the ghettos.
I
Like,
think
you know, there was legal segregation, and classes had different. You know, Napoleon ended all of that. He brought about equality before the law throughout Europe as a result of that high body count. But they're not even going to that question. They're not even looking at the pros and cons. They just kind of muddled it, you know. So, like you said, I don't get what the point was.
Because we are seeing a duality to this man and his historical impact, but maybe they just didn't execute it on it like as well as they could have.
I think that's the entire thing you get out of it is duality. Like this guy completely never. I mean, it might have been interesting. I'm kind of glad they didn't, but it might have been interesting to see childhood just so you see why he acts the way he does. But I don't even. But,
that would have been nice, yeah.
But that might not even be documented. Maybe they don't even know.
Right.
You know, so who knows if like they would just be making that shit up, you know?
Right.
But
yeah.
but I think Babak, I think when they bring up that death count at that one point, because that was one of the battles that I guess they included on, because they say he lost 2 battles, but he really only lost Waterloo. The other one, he didn't lose a battle. They just had to leave because people were dying and freezing and dying of hunger and stuff, right?
Right.
So
yeah,
it wasn't really a lost
war.
battle. It was
Yeah,
just like, we have to fucking get out of here. And that's when everyone turned on him for the most part.
Exactly.
Well, I think that was the invasion of Russia, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that was the
historically, everyone,
They
a
said,
lot of
hey,
leaders
don't wait until
don't go
it's
in
not,
there.
wait the winter out.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that.
Yeah, because historically, a lot of leaders have made mistakes of going into Russia during the winter, and so did he, right? And then he paid the price for it, even if they got to Moscow and it was abandoned, and then the Russians themselves set it on fire. It's like, well, the trade-off was he lost a shit ton of men and equipment to make that march.
Exactly. He lost the Grand Army. That was the largest army the world had seen, you know, like for a long time, if not ever.
And I do love a movie like this that shows like how formation works, and it's even like chess. I mean, we were talking about Stratego and Risk, but like chess, you send out. I mean, other movies have done it too, but this one just really focused on like send out the armory, send out this, and then the flanking, like all that stuff. Like that stuff was fascinating. I thought that stuff was handled really good, and to me, thinking about an 85-year-old man handling that, I'm guessing that the second unit director of this movie should get a lot of credit for that, because it's
probably in the field.
Oh, 100%. It's probably
Yeah.
mostly that person. Yeah, yeah.
But what Ridley Scott did really well, I think, was storyboarding these amazing scenes. Like even when they're not the battle scenes, when Napoleon is wandering through emptied out Moscow, and you have this epic, because I've been there. I've been through the Kremlin. I've seen
Is
those
that when he sits
domes.
on the throne at the
And he goes and sits on the empty throne, and the bird poo is there, like
yeah.
that. When he's looking around and you've got these epic backdrops, I mean, I give the storyboarder the credit for saying, like, here's that image, a series of images that we're going to make. Like, let's throw out the whole question of how accurate is it for what really happened in that moment, just to see just to see all of that stuff happening, like a fucking cavalry charge. And it's not against the guys in rows with the shield wall. It's dudes with muskets and squares. No one's really done that before, like in the modern 30, 40 years that they've been making these epic battle movies,
Oh,
like
it was
I
so
haven't
awesome. It
seen
was
that
so
yet.
awesome to watch.
Yeah. But still to have the same tropes of the cavalry guy goes over the shield wall behind the line, and then the backbenchers stab him. Like they still have that part of it, but then instead of swords and spears, they got the bayonets. It was so great, like, and because this was the age of bayonets and bayonet charges, and like the bayonet is an underrated weapon. They are not knives; they are like triangular things, and they do that so that the wound can't be stitched up and you're going to bleed out. And they make it so that there's a lot of damage done when you're just pulling the bayonet out,
Yeah,
because it's such a
they don't
horrific
stab you.
weapon.
They gut you.
Yeah,
They don't
they
stab
gut
you.
you. Yeah, it's horrible. Here's the other positive thing that I really love about it. And again, it's from the historical lens. I love when they're looking at the source media, looking at the original songs, looking at the original images, the paintings that were done at the time of the event, looking back at the old maps, and, like whenever they go back to the source material and then try to recreate that on film, I love it. And
Yeah,
my favorite thing,
I don't think they did enough of that though. But
they
continue.
did not
Sorry.
do enough of it. Yeah, no, they didn't do enough of it. But my absolute favorite thing is where they include the artist who was sketching or painting the event as it happened in the film. And they did that two times that I noticed. One time when Napoleon was down in Egypt and he goes to open the sarcophagus of one of those pharaohs, and there's already an artist there sketching the moment. And I'll bet you anything that there's images that artist made of that moment that we could find. But the other one that I appreciated even more was at the coronation, where he's crowning himself and also crowning Josephine as the empresses and stuff, and the emperor. And they included the artist who was sketching the moment. And you could see the rough outline of the very famous painting of Napoleon placing the crown on a kneeling Josephine. You could see the artist sketching that moment out, like a court reporter, or like that's all we have today is a court reporter. But it used to be the journalist. There was no photographer. There'd be a sketch artist.
No, no.
I think my only disappointment, because I didn't know about it beforehand, but then I was looking it up after, was like you mentioned earlier, as we started talking, was I can't recall if he ever put his hand halfway through his jacket like Napoleon
I don't think
apparently
I
liked to
saw it
do.
once. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
never saw it.
you would think that they would have picked up on that, right? Because that would have been a great historical nod. Like, this man just liked to put his hand halfway through his coat and just leave it
That's
hanging
right.
there.
They never do that in the movie, do
They
they?
never once do it.
Dude, they
No.
even do that in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Well, because that's the iconic pose. He made that. It wasn't his pose, but he made that pose famous.
That's
You know,
right.
and so that became such an iconic thing. And it's like, okay, if you're literally not going to bring these people to human life where I can relate to them, but just show the official portraitures and just the words that were documented that he said in that moment, like I'll bet you he probably said whatever he said when he's coming back from exile and his own soldiers are told to aim their guns at him, and he bares his
Yeah.
breast to show his medals and says, "Do you recognize me? I want to be back with you."
I
I'll
got a
bet
big
you
problem
those
with that.
words are what he really said.
They never give you any indication that his men love him and respect him, not once, because there's never even a secondary character that happens to be like an infantryman, or like, yeah, he's got these
The
other
common guy.
he's got
Yeah.
he's got his like other guys, his second in
He's
command.
got a sycophants. Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
I think
people
he,
that
I
come in and out, but like you don't really ever see like when he does that scene and he turns everyone and they're like, "We're here for the emperor." It's like, I don't know if that wasn't earned visually at all.
Yeah, there was just a lack of proper buildup, right? Because we got snippets, right? Like the guy saying at the beginning, "I would never lie to you," and then he told him when he was telling him about Josephine's infidelity. And then there was another scene where you saw him standing as like his men were marching by, and he was like giving them bread or some kind of food, and the occasional like pat on the back, right? So you got these snippets, but it just maybe wasn't enough to then later convey the payoff of, "Oh, he's back. Yes, we're gonna fall in line and march with you again," right?
Ridley Scott had he used to be friends with Stanley Kubrick, the great Stanley Kubrick. So Kubrick was the one that first wanted to make this movie, and he pitched this movie in the 70s, and he wanted Jack Nicholson to be, dude, that might have worked, Bob. I know you're laughing, and Audrey Hepburn, and it's like, holy shit, that might have worked. And then that kind of fell into Spielberg's hands in the early 80s, and he wasn't able to do it. He wanted to make it like an HBO thing later in the 90s. But I guess this has been floating around for so long. Dude, Jack Nicholson as Napoleon.
Jack Nicholson. Oh,
he's the height, and he's got the belly. Oh my God. If he could just get away from the Jack Nicholson isms, he might have been able to pull that off. Who knows?
Here's Bonaparte. Oh, sorry, baby.
Would you get in the bedroom right now so I can make you a child?
Sorry, man. I made my baby. I have to suspect that the actual Napoleon was probably very charismatic. I'll bet you he probably was a people person. You know, like he was an Italian and he was also French. And he may have been a dick and like a prick, but he probably knew how to talk to people. And you know, there was the part where his soldiers were the ones who helped him to actually pull the coup. You know, where they got all the lawmakers out to Versailles, and they all turn on him. And Napoleon, he looked like Curly from the Three Stooges. He was like slipping all over the floor, trying to like run away from the parliamentarians who realize it's a coup. And what happens? He tells his men, "They tried to kill me." And his guys pick up their guns, they march in, and they just all point their gun. You know, and it's like I don't see where he earned that kind of like that. In real life, he must have had that charisma. In real life,
right.
I'll bet you he and Josephine really were passionate, and it probably was a love story. You know,
yeah, I think it was
because River Phoenix. It was just
Joaquin. Yeah, it was the cast. Joaquin.
Yeah, Joaquin. Yeah. You know, there was no charisma to the acting.
No,
and you don't see how he has a wife or why he has any soldiers or followers. But the real guy must have had some charisma.
Yeah,
and I just didn't get that from the performance.
The way Joaquin played it, he was squirrely and unsure of himself, except on the battlefield. So. Again, you're right. Like, I think Joaquin Phoenix is a brilliant actor at playing a certain type of character, like Joker and like Her, but
but it wasn't this.
He's not charismatic that way.
He's not the romantic,
like Mel Gibson was.
He's not the war hero.
Oh, I think it could be characterization, right? Because as we're chatting here, I've got some stuff open, and so like obviously there's historical inaccuracies in the movies, and there's things that I'm looking at that say wasn't pointed out in the film, like non-military achievements like Napoleonic Code, the Bank of France.
Exactly.
Apparently, he was also very much had a passion for literature and enlightenment. So, you know, whereas we see him being more depicted, like they say, boorish, loutish soldier. They also mention like the parts where he's going to divorce Josephine. He actually never did slap her. You know, they said that would have been out of character for the real Napoleon to do, and then it was actually Josephine encouraging the divorce because she couldn't bear the child, versus the other way around that we got it. And that she actually died before his exile, not a year later.
We can't really like forget that the world that we live in today is different legally from the world that they lived in. That the French Revolution, the American Revolution, changed all that. No, but seriously, you know, like, and who brought that revolution to the rest of Europe? Napoleon. You know, and like you said, they never really talk about the Napoleonic Code, and the way that what he did was, you know, like for example, there were ghettos for Jewish people that were started. The first one was in Rome. And it was the first one that was started. It was also the last one that was closed. Why was it closed? Napoleon ended the ghettos. He ended class discrimination. He changed the laws that said the nobility, the people from these landowning families, have this set of rules, and everyone else has this set of rules. And oh, by the way, if you are not someone we like, you're from a group like the Jewish people or the whatever, well, we're going to give you even worse rules. Napoleon ended all of that, and he did it through violence, and so you saw maybe a little bit of the body count at the end. They didn't really explain why it was good or bad, but they never got into the whole thing where he was a phenomenon, and he was a product of the revolution. He was exporting the French Revolution, but he did it in the force of the gun because everyone in charge would rather die than to give up the legal codes they had, which gave them all this privilege and took that, like trampled all over everyone else.
Well, because we saw that because he was willing to
in the movie, he only the one time he's involved in like some political thing, he's backstage and they're talking to the common people and he just rushes out and starts fucking hitting everybody.
Yeah. Which and that was an amazing thing that I want to see tactically, visually, but they kind of glossed over it, but it was cool to see. But they don't show the politician. They don't show the legal scholar, and the enlightened thinker and stuff. I mean,
they really the part that's not there. This movie focuses on two aspects of his personality and his life, and that's it. The love. I mean, the inner turmoil, I guess, but just the love or the lust or whatever for Josephine, and then his war tactics. That's it. They don't really get else,
No, they don't. And if it was me that was like in charge of the script and the storytelling or like those big strategic things, I would say take at least half of the screen time that they devote to his relationship with Josephine and put that to his relationship with politics and the parliaments and because it's not just that he married this or that noble person, it's that his brother did, everyone else did. His brother was the king of Spain, just show how he was politically reorganizing the courts of Europe.
It definitely could have been interwoven, right? You could have interwoven the Josephine.
You gotta put
with the other politics
and the court politics. All the noble court backstabbing and intriguing. Like you were saying, Mark, they just show everything as an accomplished fact. They don't show. The only time there's any sense of doubt and urgency and nervousness is at the beginning. And that's what makes it so great. Like Napoleon's doing this neurotic counting thing, which I don't get it. I guess he's OCD. And but you see that this was not a for sure thing. It was a close call. It could have gone either way. It was a hard fought. They made a lot of decisions in the moment and it just kind of worked. And then after the fact, they said, oh, make a painting of me showing me confident in victory. It would have been so much cooler to see how they were just constantly battling the forces of monarchy and the old ways, these scheming, because then the British aren't the heroes, the British aren't the heroes in that way. Like the British are the villains they are, and the autocrats of Russia. I mean, it took World War One to bring down the autocrats. They had slavery of white people in Russia until World War One, basically. I mean, it was outlawed before then, but still in practice, you know what I mean? And so the old, in this movie, the good guys, the Brits and everyone, really, they were fighting for a legal code that had enslavement, lots of different class distinctions. And Napoleon was against that. He was building the world that you and I know. And he did it through a lot of brilliant tactical victories, and he fucked up big time in Russia, and he had a huge body count. But we live in the world that it created. And I kind of like this world. I'd rather have this than live in a fiefdom,
Yeah. Well, I think I have a quote here for our some of our issues with the inaccuracies, right? So I guess Ridley Scott did actually respond to critics, and I quote here. So he goes, dismissing their concerns, Napoleon dies then. 10 years later, someone writes a book, and then someone takes that book and writes another. And so 400 years later, there's a lot of imagination in history books. When I have issues with the historians, I ask, excuse me, mate, were you there? No? Well, shut the F up then.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love that when he goes, were you there? Then shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, movies based on historical figures are always going to take scrutiny and bullshit, and
I mean, there's always going to be liberties, right? Because unless you have some way to verify every little bit that you want to show, you're going to have to make something up, most likely.
Especially when you're talking about someone that lived way before television or anything that can be, everything that about them is just written.
Like the opposite of today's world, right? Where anybody can just whip out a camera and it's recorded for all time.
Now you can prove it.
Live stream.
Things that I saw in the battle scenes here, those canon salvos, like where they're just iron shot, just, going out and coming in, just standing there. It's like no one's actually seen that in real life since 200 years ago, like that time. And
Mhm.
yet this was a crazy thing that people went through, like just the way they would stand up. It was some of those battle scenes where they get out of the trenches and march in formation. It reminded me of all these World War One movies and stuff, like the stuff like that. I mean, no one's seen that stuff
Yeah, that's a
happening.
good
But the
point. So
thing that,
you're kind of recreating it as a director and as a creator, just
oh my
making it look the
goodness,
way you think it's going to look, or if somebody drew a painting of it or whatever back in the day.
Yeah, and to take those paintings and bring them to life. Paris and France, the revolution was getting out of hand. Everyone's just becoming very violent, and it was counter-revolution and counter-revolution, and and they showed it at the beginning. Napoleon took cannons, filled them with grape shot, which is basically you take a cannon, you make it into a shotgun. Instead of one large iron ball, you have 12 smaller iron balls, and they don't just like knock down, like a line of 30 dudes in front of you. It's got the spread that will be like 5 dudes, 10 dudes wide, plus 30 back. And it is absolutely horrific. And the thing that made Napoleon such a brilliant field tactician is that he brought the field cannons in front of the infantry, loaded them with grape shot, and just mowed down. He didn't do the thing where it's like, my soldiers are going to march against yours. He was like, no, we're going to fill our cannons with grape shot, mow down all your soldiers, and then my guys will come up and bayonet the wounded, like that. And people feared him because they thought this tactic was barbaric, and that's why they called him a demon, because he was doing this stuff because cannons were supposed to be used against city walls. How could you turn them into grape shot against real people? And they showed that for a moment, the way that he cleared the streets in Paris and put down all the counter revolutions and like end of the reign of terror and stuff. And just seeing all that stuff put on the screen, like I've read about it, but it looked very realistic. I was just like, oh, okay, like I felt like I was kind of in the moment with all the cannon fire and stuff. So that was his thing. He was an artillery guy, and I've never really seen it except for this movie, like done so well. So that's why I'm really glad that it was made and I was able to check it out on IMAX, and just it's like, dude, when those cannonballs are coming in at you, it's like, whoo.
Well, look, and I'll tell you guys right now, like, clearly I'm not a normie because I have a channel about movies, and I would like to think I know what I'm talking about movies. But when it comes to historical movies, I love having Babak on because he's a historian. That's what he does. That's, he went to school for many, many, many years and
I
learned
love
about
it.
that shit. And as if you couldn't tell, he knows what he's talking about. But for me, one of the things I liked about this movie, and you could hate me for this, but I liked it that it didn't get into too much of the politics. I know that's, one of your bigger gripes with it, Bobak, but like, I like that it kind of it moved at a pace for how long it was. It never bogged down with too much just conversation where I
No, that's
probably
true.
would have started to doze off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Mark, as a gamer, we talked about Stratego and Risk and chess, but as like a video game, what did this movie, some of the battle scenes bring to mind? Do you even play those kind of games?
I don't play them actively, but I mean, when you watch cool stuff like that, you get there's a lot of genres that cover those kind of things, right? You've got RTS, real time strategy games that you could come to mind. Civilization, for example, is a popular franchise where you can build these kind of empires and send things out. I mean, it gave me those kind of vibes, right? Like Age of Empires, where you would build these kind of armies going through like those types of historical time periods as you're building your civilization, and you would have battles like that.
I find like this movie's kind of lack of substance was what I liked about it. I liked that it was non-dramatic and just kind of quirky when he was at home with Josephine, and the way I agree with you, Balak. Like, he was the wrong choice for it, but like the way he played it made me laugh. And again, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just kind of enjoyed this movie because it was just kind of it was a fun ride. Like, me and Josh saw it last night in the theater and we're just laughing a lot. And then during the battle scenes, we were really enthralled and really enjoyed it. So it's better than I thought, but I I don't disagree with anything that you guys said because I don't know shit about this subject. But as a movie, it was kind of fun.
For me, Ben, I'm kind of like in there with you, right? I came in with no expectations. I'm certainly no history buff, but I was thoroughly entertained. I didn't feel the runtime at all, but you do notice like some of the flaws as you're watching, where it's like between the pace, the things that they want to show. You've got some historical accuracy, some inaccuracies, and to me, this will definitely depend upon each individual viewer. Because if you know anything about Napoleon, so maybe some of that comes across as a negative or a positive, but for me, for the most part, I mean, I was entertained and I love seeing like, those kind of just epic historical types of dramas, on the big screen. So I think to me overall, it was good. I mean, it's definitely something I could see myself watching again, just to pick out little bits, again from history, or I know I have other friends and family who typically enjoy those kind of historical dramas and I could see them enjoying that. So, for what it is, I'm glad they're still making movies like that. And I'm also glad they didn't shy away from like, how people behaved back then, because I think that's important, right? Like today we're censoring or being too sensitive so much that I think we're just losing a lot of like, hey, this is, we've come from a lot and we've come a lot to today. We've still got a long ways to go, but you should never forget like where we started.
I'm so happy that I saw it, and I'm definitely going to be watching it more than one time over and over again. And I never rewatch anything. But for me, it's more because they're trying to just bring the world, that world to life in a big budget, spectacular way. And I just love seeing, people in costume, on horseback, in formation, out in the field, and just filming it. And, you really can't replace that with CGI. So I love that it was done. It wasn't, HBO quality storytelling or casting or acting. And that part, I'll usually just fast forward that part when I rewatch it.
Yeah, I would love to see more, Hollywood to not like ignore or forget that, these kinds of films are important to create, going forward.
I think we should go through the entire Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure catalog, where next we do a Genghis Khan movie. And then we can do a Beethoven movie, and then we can do a Billy the Kid movie, whatever. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the podcast review of Napoleon. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Babak. You guys are the best.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, as always.
Oh, hey, it's been a pleasure, as always. Thank you.
You guys are part of the channel. We love you. Next time, everyone, we drink ya cinema.